So today we're talking about moisture content in lumber, specifically what I use to measure it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm standing outside of my container kiln here. I got a load of white pine in there that just finished drying. And you know, this week it occurred to me, I've made hundreds of videos for you guys, all different topics. And the one thing I've never talked about, which is pretty important, what I use to measure the moisture content in my lumber before I sell it. It's a tool I use almost every day, and I don't know that it's ever been on this channel once. So it's kind of hard for me to believe, but I bought a new toy this week, which kind of made me think about this and spurred this video on. So let's open up this kiln and I'll introduce you to the stars of the show. So I don't often shoot a video inside the kiln. It's not our normal, workplace, but I thought it was fitting for two reasons. Number one, it's raining outside, and number two, it's kind of conducive to what we're talking about today. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about why we kiln dry and why it's important to know the moisture content in lumber. That's a topic that a lot of you guys are probably familiar with, and I got a bunch of other videos on the channel that'll kind of clue you into that. Today I'm talking more about what I use to measure moisture in air-dried, green, kiln-dried lumber. Shockingly, I know, the tool we use for that job is a moisture meter. So there's a few different types of moisture meters. Pinless, which is what I use, that just has a scanning surface that you just put on the surface of the wood and it'll give you a reading, and they work very well. The other type would be a pin meter, which actually has pins that go into the wood. Me personally, I prefer pinless because they're fast and efficient. I can go through a whole kiln load of wood and take different readings throughout, top, bottom, sides, and get a real good feel of what the moisture content is in that load. I don't have to damage the wood by putting pinholes in, and I think they work better. They actually measure the moisture in the wood, not on the surface of the wood. They are species calibrated, and it's just my choice, and I'm perfectly happy with it. So that's what I use. Specifically, I use Wagner meters. I have no endorsement from Wagner. I'm not sponsored. I get nothing from them. I'm a paying customer, just like you are. So I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. It's not going to be really a product review per se. You guys know that's not my style. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this new meter I just bought, which is pretty neat, and I think it's interesting. But before we get into the new fancy stuff, let's talk about the old school dinosaur technology. I've had this Wagner MMC 210 for, 15 years at least. It's been a workhorse for me. It's been reliable. I can't tell you how many times I've dropped it. I probably shouldn't admit that, but it just keeps on going. So this is bare bones, dead simple, which at the time it was probably pretty cutting edge technology, but basically all you do with this one is turn it on, set your species. You can see my wore off chicken scratch there. I have all the different species I commonly dry and the associated code with them, which is actually their specific gravity rating. So you just dial it in for whatever you're drying, and you take different readings around, and basically just displays your moisture content. The one reason I decided to replace this, you can see on this LCD screen, I lost my last set of LCDs, whatever you call them. So sometimes, depending on what you're doing, it's hard to get a reading, but like that would actually be 6.8. Yeah, that gets annoying. I mean, the meter still works, but I figure after 15 years, it's time for an upgrade. So, of course, being that that's always been super reliable and I've never had any issues with it, Wagner was the first place I looked when I went to buy a new meter. And wow, I'm surprised by how far they've come. So you can see this has a lot more buttons. This is the Orion 950. This is their new top-of-the-line handheld meter, and it's pretty sweet. I've been playing around with it here for about a week, and honestly, it's got more features than I'm probably going to use. Just to take a look here, it's got a backlit display. You can change the depth, you know, for how thick your wood is. I don't know how well this display is going to show up on camera, to be honest with you. The species is the exact same, so I dial that in just like I dial in the old one. The one thing that I'd say is kind of a bummer is you don't have the cheat sheet like you do on the old one, but honestly, I got all that stuff memorized. You could quiz me on any particular type of wood that I dry, and I could tell you the number. Like this pine right here is 35 on the meter. So we go to species. I already have it dialed in on 35 because, well, I was in here checking before I started filming, and just like that, you put it down 7.6%. So the other thing these two share in common, if I was reaching underneath the stack or somewhere where I can't see the screen, you just reach under, tap the button, and then you pull it away and you can read it. So they both share that, which is a very nice feature when you're in these dark kilns and you can't really see what you're doing. That's where the similarities end. From there, this thing is just loaded with features. It's got an audio alarm that I can set my minimum and maximum moisture levels, and I can just go around here and just listen. It'll beep if it's too low or too high. I already told you I can change the depth. I can measure different stuff, like the relative humidity of the air temperature. Let's see if we can get a reading here. Right now it is 58.7%, and it is, wait for it, 79 degrees. Now this kiln was 120 degrees when we just opened the door, but I'm standing right here. It's a cool wet day, so that's why those numbers drop so quick. But I guarantee you, you walk down to that end, it would change drastically. You can measure concrete and plywood and sheetrock, and I'll probably never do that, to be honest with you. It's not really my normal thing, but I can. But there's one feature here that is pretty amazing to me, and that's why I sprung for this more expensive model, their top-of-the-line model, versus some of their others, because they have more basic models that they still offer that are cheaper. But the reason I sprung for this model, if you see that data button there, this will actually record your results. And like everything in our modern society, it will link to your smartphone. So what that means for me is I can go through a stack of lumber like this, and I can make a bunch of readings, and it will record every reading I make, and it'll make a report. I can print that report out. Now, why is that important? Well, I thought that would be a neat feature to have because I do a lot of custom drawing for people, and basically up until this point it's been, well, I dried it for you, take my word for it. If they have a meter they can check, but with this feature it kind of gives me a level of reportability, accountability, and I can make them a report and say, this is what your lumber looked like when it shipped here. So that was a neat feature that I thought, you know, up to this point I'm not doing that, but I thought, well, if I'm upgrading technology, let's do that, because that might be a very handy thing to have in the future. So for that alone, it was worth, you know, it wasn't too much from the next tier to this one, and I thought that data recording is probably worthwhile. Now, in full disclosure, I will say, I'm no tech genius, but I'm also not a slouch. I'm decent with this stuff, and I had to call Wagner to get this thing set up. I just could not figure it out. Talked to a nice guy there. He, in a couple of minutes, had me straightened out and had it working right, and it just works a little differently than what I thought it should, and once he explained how it actually works, it works fine. He did tell me they are very shortly releasing a new app that will link to this that is supposed to be a lot more streamlined, a lot less clunky, so take that for what it's worth, but that's what he told me. But for what I'm doing, this app will work fine. It was just a matter of figuring it out. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this. I've been fooling around with both of them. That 16-year-old or 15-year-old or whatever it is, they read about a point different, give or take. So that's still holding its own pretty close. The downside to that thing, if I want to recalibrate that, which honestly I never have, probably maybe should have at some point, I gotta send that back to Wagner. The neat feature about the new models they sell, they come with that. No, that's not just a plastic display stand. That's a calibration tray. So you put it on here and you set it to calibrate and you run it. And each one of these is unique to each meter. So you need to keep this with this meter because they don't, they don't cross over or anything. But I can ensure this thing is calibrated at any given time, which is nice. If you ever have any question about it, you can calibrate it. It did come with this nice big old case, which is good, but another advantage the old one has, you would not believe how handy this belt case is. I can strap this on my pocket and go from kiln to kiln. I can go out in the air dry yard and I can measure a bunch of lumber and I can be hands-free, and that thing honestly is worth its weight in gold. So I might have to figure out something for this, because believe me, I tried and it just doesn't quite fit. It does have this rubber boot on it for protection in case you drop it. I don't know who would ever do such a thing, but that should help. So that's about it. They honestly do the same jobs. It's just like most things with technology. This one does it a little slicker, a few more features, kind of a better user experience, but the old girl still works pretty good. So that is how I measure the moisture in basically everything that comes out the kiln goes out the door. It's an important part of the operation. I measure the air dry stuff when it's going into the kiln to know when it's ready to go into the kiln. Green lumber, not so much. These meters will only read up to 32% moisture. Your green lumber is almost always going to be over that. So they're not too valuable for green lumber. There's really not a whole lot of sense in measuring green lumber. But once they get under 32%, then they read very accurately. So it's an everyday part of this operation. There's not many days go by that I'm not using these things, and I just can't believe that I've never showed them to you. So I figured, while it was fresh in my mind, while I had this new one I'm playing around with, I figured I'd get it out, make a video in case anybody's interested. But Wagner moisture meters, they work pretty good. I'd recommend them. All right, guys, that's all I got on this one. Thanks for watching.